I'm Jeremy Michael Raymer, Pittsburgh born and raised. We're sitting here in Uptown in my studio. I grew up around Glassport, about 12 miles outside of downtown Pittsburgh, and I've been creating artwork with a primary focus on murals for full time for going on 9 years. I'm about to start the 10th year on May 6th, 2025 will be the anniversary date for me, and I do artwork from a small scale to a large scale. Focus on street art-esque murals. Portraiture is my primary focus, and just get to do a little bit of everything here. People commission me, businesses, and I do a lot of murals on my own accord just because I love to get out there and paint big things.
I wanted to say thank you so much for talking with us about your art, and I'm so excited because I've seen your art all over Pittsburgh. Your murals, they're everywhere.
I've been pretty busy the past decade or so, yeah, for sure.
How did you begin doing murals? Like, were you an artist at the very beginning?
So, I've always liked artwork. I never took it seriously. I never thought, at any point really until I was in my 30s that I would be an artist. I get to take a few non-technical electives. So I would take art classes. I took sculpture 2, drawing. And in my drawing class, for whatever reason, we were doing like a life study that day where it was a crushed can, like a can of paint that had nothing on it. It was just bare metal and maybe a brush. And for whatever reason, after my professor was looking at my sketch, he said that I drew like a painter and that I should paint. I was a junior in biomechanical engineering curriculum at that point, and finished school. And then I worked in Pittsburgh for a little bit. I worked as a thermophysical engineer, and I worked at Alcoa as well as a research and design smelting cell technician. And then I moved out to California. And when I moved out there, had a Honda Civic. Literally took virtually nothing. The trunk was half full. I had clothes, I had my bass guitar, and I took my paints with me for whatever reason. And that was like August 2005. That's when I first started painting again. And then I found spray paint. I visited my sister down in Miami and saw Wynwood Wall, saw these murals everywhere, saw they were done with spray paint. I started doing it. I loved it. I would still do my 40, 45, maybe even 50 hours of engineering work a week. And then I was basically working a second job, 30, 40 hours every day, kind of experimenting, learning the spray paint, playing with other things, some of the inks and stuff that I use. And then by 2016, I just started to make a little bit of a name for myself. I felt like I had momentum going, and at the time, I was working at Westinghouse, and we were about to go on mandatory 70-hour weeks. And I went into my annual review meeting in April of 2016, and literally at the last second decided and told my boss I was resigning in 6-8 weeks, and I was going to pursue artwork. And here we are, almost 9 full years later.
Wow. So when we're talking about murals versus what some people may say graffiti.
Yeah.
Can you define how do you see it?
I feel like people have the conception that if you use spray paint, it's graffiti. I just happen to find spray paint and I love it. I was never a graffiti artist. I'm not a tagger. I sign my real name to everything. I happen to use the same tool that they do, but for me, if you would really wanted to categorize it, it'd be street art. Just for the type of aesthetic. And I like to experiment, and I kind of have my look now where it's a little bit of a mix of organic, a little bit, I like to say analog or digital, because I do a lot of stuff on the computer, and it has that look where it's kind of not, it's a hard edge, it's not organic. And so yeah, if you really wanted to say it, I'm an artist. I focus on murals. but I do from a small scale to large, and I wouldn't self-identify as a graffiti artist. I'm a street artist muralist.
Okay.
This year was a little uncharacteristic. I was painting outside longer than I typically do. I usually try to finish usually around Thanksgiving, maybe early December, but sometimes, for me, I'll have an estimate of how long it will take a project, but at the end of the day, it's not done until it's done. So sometimes they take a little bit longer. But Kelly O's in the Strip District was first. She had reached out quite a few years ago, and we thought about doing the mural, and then it got pushed to the wayside. And then she came back through and kind of wanted to feature her history with being on diners, drive-ins, and dives, and to revamp her building down there. So we kind of leaned into that, and also like my main area of focus which is portraiture. So we did Guy Fieri down there, add a little bit of a background with the sky. One of the employees said that Kelly O is like the sun, and she just brightens up a room. So that's kind of why I did like a bright sky scene in the background for that. So that was last of the year. Prior to that, I was out in the North Hills. That was my first mural out there. I was a little bit up McKnight Road, just before the mall, and that was for Romanol Law Group. I did a Batman there. That also featured, pretty frequently people ask me to do city skyline, Pittsburgh things, and I'm 50-50 on it. Sometimes, I think like, why not feature other things, because we can see the skyline here, but for that one, for whatever reason, it made sense, and I was like, okay, I'll do something a little bit different. So I went with a nighttime scene with that, and definitely like to do comic book characters. So we did Batman for that, a loose nod to like Law and Justice, kind of tied in with the
But also, they
legal.
filmed it here too.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool.
So that one was that, and then prior to that, I was on the north side. I've been there many a times for a project, but a really great couple had reached out and wanted some artwork on their wall. When I went and met them, we met their pup, and his name was Homer. I automatically assumed Homer Simpson because I love The Simpsons. I definitely feature them frequently. But the husband was actually a huge baseball fan, so it was Homer for that. So that helped dictate what we did there because they weren't sure, and I had been wanting to paint Honus Wagner for quite some time, so I threw that out there, and they loved the idea, and it kind of fit the wall nicely there for the size we had to use. So I did that one in August. The largest one of the year was for Humane Action Pittsburgh. I did that in like April, May, June. That's on the south side, just across the river from where we're sitting at now, at 28th and East Carson. It was a large raccoon, and it also featured some foliage and flowers you typically see in Western PA. It's always nice to connect with people through my artwork, and randomly, sometimes I'll hit someone up, shoot them a DM or whatever, and Joe was super awesome and appreciative and was 100% on board, so that was a fun one to do and get out there as well.
That's great. So, like, when people commission you to do art, how does it go about? Like, do they say, well, I've got an idea, and do you work with them? What's the process?
It spans a pretty large gamut. Sometimes it's as simple as, private person or business is like, we want artwork for whatever reason. Maybe we have a new location opening, or maybe sometimes people always wanted a mural of whatever sort. So sometimes it's, completely prescribed where they're like, we want this concept, or even here's this design file. Like I have a project coming up where the client herself is a graphic designer and has a pretty great creative eye, and she literally designed it and was like, would you be interested in doing this? And like, that's a really nice situation where it's kind of a gimme, and I don't have to do design work and flesh out the idea from their mind. But sometimes it's the other end of the spectrum and it's completely nothing, and I may suggest things that I've wanted to paint for a while, or lots of times I'll do something site specific where it makes sense or fits for the area, whether it's someone from that area or some other effect where I think it just works well for the wall.
So I know that you've worked with Tom Savini on his
Love
special
Savini,
special
yeah.
project
Yep.
of Fluffy, right?
Fluffy, yeah.
Yeah, which was from which movie?
Creep Show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that one was really cool. I got to see that one on the corner there. It's in Bloomfield, right?
Bloomfield, it's on Taylor Street, not far from the Time Machine. Shout out, one of my favorite sandwiches in the city, a bacon, egg, and cheese. It's on the side of Rust Belt Relics.
Yes, so that
little
antique
shop.
store.
Yep.
Yes. So to do something like, let's say that one, how long did that take?
So that one comparatively has a fair amount of texture and detail for the scale. By and large, 40 hours, maybe 50 hours for that one. I can cover a pretty good bit of surface area. For murals, maybe 200, 300 hours is the upper limit I've spent.
Wow.
But for a commission I did a few years back, that one has taken the cake so far. That was about 1,100 man hours of work for that one. It was all hand cut stencils, multi-layer, a fairly large 4-panel piece that's in Aether Yoga downtown. They just recently reopened also, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a time of year that is better for doing murals?
I definitely get antsy in the winter. If it's sub 35-ish, I really don't like to personally be out there, but I will. The paint doesn't work 100% proper when you get that low too. You kind of have to artificially heat it up to room temp.
Oh,
You can
wow.
spray for 5-7 minutes, and then it sputters, and also like it dries on the cap. So it just makes it more difficult. Like if 60, 70 degrees is kind of the ideal. Also on the other end of the spectrum, when you get above 90, the paint also doesn't spray proper as well. Not exactly what I'm used to, so you kind of got to work around that. So usually, to get back to your question, between April and the very beginning of December is the typical time frame for outdoor season, quote unquote here.
So when you show up to doing a mural, we kind of talked about this, about how many different paints you might bring
Yeah.
or cans. What does it look like? Is it you've got like different crates of stuff, or do you have just one bag? Or
So typically over the course of the project, I'll start out simply. Usually, depending on what level of like wall prep needs to be done, I almost always prime it to some effect, so it's a light color, white ideally, and then whatever the predetermined design is, I'll go in Photoshop, and I'll do an effect on it called posterization, which basically I'll make it a black and white image first, and then posterize it means that it'll group each individual pixel into one of a certain number of tones. So usually a level 7 or 8 is what I'll do. So that'll take a complex picture and break it down into only white, black, and 6 tones of gray in there. So it looks very close to what it is, but it's a simplified version. And then I'll project that onto the wall, and I'll trace where those delineation marks go. So that'll give me a good guide for the gradients when I go back. Whether it's black and white or color, it doesn't really matter. I know relatively, this is the darkest area, this is the lightest area, and these are where things transition. And then depending on what the color palette is, I might start off with only 10 or 20 colors and kind of fill in those rough areas. And then I'll do what I'll call as a correction, where I'll take a photo of the state it's at that point. I'll put that file back into Photoshop, and then I'll overlay the exact reference file over top of that. And then I'll make little minor tweaks so the likeness is enhanced with each progressive pass. And as I do that, I bring more and more colors out. So at the end, typically 70 to 90-ish colors or so, and those will all be organized. They typically come in small boxes of 6. So I organize those on my lift or whatever I'm working off of. These are my blues, these are my greens, these are my reds, and from light to dark. So as I'm working, it speeds up the process. I'll spray, I'm like, oh, I need to shift that a little bit. I put that down, pick up the next can, and tweak it, and kind of go progressively. And just, a lot of people were like, oh, how do you do this? And it's a pragmatic, technical approach where, I know I'm not going to get finished until I start spraying, and don't worry about the final details and just focus on certain areas, whether it's a 3 foot by 4 foot section or maybe the eye, the nose, or whatever. and just kind of increase the complexity as we go
So
along.
it's like working on a puzzle, kind of.
Exactly, paint by numbers, and then there's certain levels I could teach this to anyone, that the approach is the same no matter what I do. If I was doing like signage, it would be the same approach where I rough it in and then I progressively increase the likeness to what it's meant to be. Sometimes I will use different stencils of sorts. It may be hand cut paper stencil, or sometimes I have a 30-inch vinyl cutter downstairs. I'll do a vinyl cut stencil as well.
The city of Pittsburgh and creating these murals and making a connection between the two. What does that mean for you?
Part of the rationale and reason of why I did the murals, all this was kind of originated from me seeing murals, large street art style murals, a plethora and a high density of them, and I felt like there was an opportunity here where we are a little bit behind the times, and there's definitely other artists that have been grinding and have been doing artwork here for a period of time, but Pittsburgh's a big city. We have a lot of amazing canvases, so part of it was just like I kind of wanted to recreate that here myself, and over the years I've brought in other artists to either collaborate with or help facilitate them to add some complexity to the public art scene here.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a sense of pride doing that, is creating this kind of new, I guess, canvas for your city.
Yeah, it's wild for me to be able to kind of integrate my artwork into the architectural landscape and then see, photographers, people like you or David DeCello or whomever, take photos and have fun with it, see videos and just see it spread organically over the years. And go from, I was an engineer for 12 years prior to this, and then no one knew who the heck I was, and over a period of time, little by little, to make a name for myself and be a fairly in-demand commission muralist and artist as well. And it's definitely taken me to every corner of the city and had the opportunity to meet thousands, if not tens of thousands of people and interact with them digitally or in person over the years. So it's definitely surreal to me to be able to experience that.
So if people were coming to Pittsburgh and wanted to experience your murals,
Yeah.
I know you got a map somewhere.
I do have 2 maps. A quick note on that as well, and it will be coming out in a few weeks. Visit Pittsburgh, our #1 tourist entity here, had reached out in December, and I'll be featured in the 2025 Visitors Guide
Oh, okay.
as a public artwork and muralist. So anyone coming into town kind of get a little idea that my artwork's around. But on my socials, whether it's Facebook, my business page, Jeremy M. Raymer, or my Instagram, same Jeremy M. Raymer, in my about or highlighted, there's a Google map, the Raymer Mural Tour. It's self-guided, and you can get directions and see where there's concentrations of my artwork. Total, there's 80, 85-ish murals. Primarily, they're outside. There's a few that are inside that you can either see during business hours or otherwise. There's 2 in the Strip, for instance. 2 of my earliest on PGH Sports. They're on rolling security doors. So when the business is open, you can't see them, but when they're closed, lots of times people are down the Strip when everything's rolling and they had no idea.
Oh, and then
those
it comes
murals are
down.
from 2016, so late night after hours or whenever, you'll see them. But you can download, you can access that map, or there's also a PDF version. It has all the locations and names. The Google one has images too, so pretty much 18, 19 different neighborhoods spread out all over the city. And then semi-recent, I've been doing sub-tours where I'll be having one noted coming out for the north side, for instance, if you're in a certain area of town. So you could do an hour-ish walk or so. I did that for Halloween, for my Halloween-themed ones, and I'm kind of be featuring other artists as well. The Braddock pieces you saw,
Yes.
I'll put that out there, and just a little self-guided tour. You can walk it, bike it, run it, bus it, whatever, and see artwork all over the city.